listening to the Ocean Rowing Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Painter, physical therapist and owner of Strong and Empowered Rowing. I help people continue their love of rowing without aches and pains. Along the way, I decided I wanted to row across the Atlantic Ocean. I'm finding it super hard to get in touch with previous ocean rowers and find the answers on how to make this possible. So this podcast is to share my story and what I learn as I get ready for and ultimately cross the Atlantic Ocean. Hear from experts in different areas and from others who have completed ocean rows. So anyone who wants to do this has easy access and we can share our stories with the world.
We were the first trio, and if we made it, we were always going to be the first trio, the fastest trio, whatever, to do that route across the mid-Pacific. So, we kind of knew that we had the opportunity to be the first at doing something, but the driver was about the experience of it. So getting into Hawaii, it was amazing. I could practically smell the pineapples and the fresh food.
You just heard from Megan Hoskin of Pacific Terrific. She was part of a trio, the first trio to cross the Pacific Ocean from Monterey to Honolulu. Along the way, they faced hurricanes and they recorded things for a movie that just came out called Why Row an Ocean. Once it's available for us to see, I'll definitely post that in the show notes for you guys on how you can do that. But she also shares tons of knowledge, things that no one else has mentioned, including back pocket ideas, Bluetooth speakers, charging cables, red box, favorite foods, you name it, she mentioned it. So I'm really excited to share this with you guys. If you don't know what a back pocket idea is, don't worry, you're going to find out, and I hope you enjoy the show. But what got you into wanting to row? You rowed across the Pacific last year, right?
Yeah, that's right. So this time last year we were out on the ocean.
Oh, that's crazy.
It is. It feels like a million years ago, and like only a month that we stepped off the boat all at the same time. But yeah, so I was part of a trio. There were three of us. I was the skipper of the crew, rowing across the Pacific in the Great Pacific Race.
Yep.
Last year. I know obviously the Talisker is probably by far the most well known of all the big races. But yeah, we set out on the Pacific. And it's a bit of a different story from other people getting into it, I guess. I know that like yourself and so many people, it's kind of this dream that you might have for years and try to figure out how to make it happen. Mm-hmm. We actually went from 5.5 months before flying out to California. I got contacted about the possibility of joining a crew of one at that point, and asked if I'd be interested. And within about 3 minutes, I said yes, absolutely. And then set about figuring out how on earth to make that happen, how to make it possible. I'd obviously been investigating it and looking at it, and she'd sort of got my name as a tip-off as somebody that was already sort of teetering on wanting to get involved in ocean rowing. But yeah, it wasn't this sort of many years of build-up and planning and preparation. It was very much opportunity lands in your inbox one night, and you don't take 2 seconds before you say yes, and then try to figure out what you need to do to pull it off.
How did that person find you?
I think my background is in sort of probably saying yes to silly ideas or brilliant ideas, depending on how you look at them and whether you're my mother or not. But I've always sort of got involved in mountaineering and expeditions and being sort of very remote places and sort of testing yourself and challenging yourself and doing things like that. So ocean rowing naturally comes up on that agenda. And I went along to a few events, and I went along actually to a talk by a then sort of aspiring ocean rower who, again, was in the sort of stages of saying, I'm going to make this happen, but I've got no idea how. And that actually turned out to be Kiko Matthews, who then, again, a few months later, set out and set the record on the Atlantic for solo female. So, you sort of get exposed to other people that are sort of saying, yeah, this is a good idea. And you sort of absorb it, I think. So I'd expressed an interest sort of tentatively. And my other crewmate who was setting out to try and put a crew together somehow came across my name, and I was fastest off the button to say I'm in.
That is so awesome. So you had 5.5 months before you did it. So
we did, and by that point,
everything?
she was a crew of 1. Then we became a crew of 2, and then we had to try and find. At that point, we had a boat for 4. So we had to try and find other crew, and you sort of look at it and think, how on earth? I had no idea. I'd never even rowed. Never ever and I still have never rowed anything but an ocean rowing boat. So yeah, it's a huge amount to try and figure out. And I think I was listening to your podcast. I think it was the last one you did or something, in the chat that you were speaking to said something along the lines of perfection is the enemy of good enough. And that's exactly the attitude that we had to take, to be honest. Saying, right, what's everything we'd like to do? And then strip that back and say, what's everything we just have to do to be able to get a boat on the water and start rowing? So yeah, 5.5 months is not a long time to go from 0 to getting on a plane and rocking up in California, and thinking, right, set out to sea.
It's crazy. So you didn't really get to choose, because it was brought to you to do the Pacific. So you didn't really get to choose which race you did or where you went, huh?
I hadn't. The Pacific was the race that I'd sort of expressed an interest in. So I contacted the race organisers a few months previously, and then sort of put it on the back burner, thinking, well, I've got a few other things going on. But it's always the case, isn't it? I think it's great. You have to start engaging with things. You have to start sort of putting the feelers out, and I always call them back pocket ideas. So I'll sort of gather as much as I can, and then sort of take all these brilliant, crazy, wonderful, mad ideas and stick them all in the back pocket, because it's not, you need obviously everything to come together, the opportunity, being able to make it happen, whether that's financially or in terms of time, family commitments and things like that. So it just happened that when I got that email, that was the back pocket idea that I could make happen somehow at that point in time.
I love that. I'm stealing back pocket ideas. That is a fantastic word choice for it. So with only 5.5 months to prepare, where did you spend most of your time for it? Was it the fundraising to get the money to do it? Was it the training? Where do you feel like most of your time went?
Oh, it's absolutely crazy, because you look at this and you think, right, obviously with 5.5 months out, we had to be in a position to be able to financially cover the majority cost of the row. Anybody and everybody will say that the hardest thing in theory is obviously sponsorship and fundraising. And if you're trying to obviously raise money for charity as well, it gets really difficult to figure out how to generate sort of interest and corporate sponsorship and personal sponsorship, and how then to channel that into sort of the charity versus sort of the kit and equipment and things that you need for the row. So there's so much. It was like saying, right, and I don't have a background in any of this. I just go off and do my own thing. I've never sort of had to try to put like a campaign together.
Yeah.
I had to sign up to Instagram. I had no idea how that worked. And it felt really weirdly self-involved to be, flinging stuff about myself out into the ether. But yeah, trying to generate sort of some kind of presence and interest, trying to figure out how to make it worthwhile and put together some kind of, around the charity stuff, I guess. There are some crews that go out and raise hundreds of thousands of pounds or dollars for incredible causes, and that is absolutely epic. And how they do it, I have no idea. I think it's incredible. There's no way we could say we were there to do it for charity. It was more a case of saying, this is something amazing that we want to make happen, and as a byproduct of that, can we make it also be some good or some use to, some purpose bigger than ourselves. So there was then trying to figure out how to do the stuff financially and engage with issues. So we were trying to raise awareness around plastic pollution, also trying to raise funds for a mental health charity in the UK. But then there's the stuff like, how do I row? So I bought an erg.
Awesome.
Helped. That was
good
my
start.
first rowing experience. Yeah. I got a sponsorship from a local gym, which was brilliant. So I got straight in there and started working on the physical training and conditioning. But I have to say, of all the prep, and I was doing this full time, so I chose, well, I had no option. I couldn't make it happen and be working at the same time, so I just threw everything out the window, and doing this was my full-time job for the 5.5 months before we set out. So yeah, trying to do the social media sponsorship, sort of, I must have sent out more than 10,000 emails to prospective sort of commercial and corporate sponsors, whether it was financial or product. It was all consuming, you know, and then all the qualifications and the training and stuff that you need to do. Certainly for the Pacific race, I don't know about for the Atlantic, but you know, there's a huge amount of sort of criteria in terms of the qualifications and stuff that you need to tick off, which alone account for maybe 5 or 6 weeks worth of kind of full-time focus. So yeah, my head was absolutely spinning, not just with the to-do list, but trying to come up with the to-do list. It was, yeah, but I think we were really lucky in a way that we only had sort of 5.5, 6 months. I think the more time you have, the more things you'll find to add to that list, and the more you'll feel you haven't done enough and you need to do more. But we had no choice, you know, time was ticking and flights were booked and the boat was being shipped, and it was like, right, we just got to turn up in California and get there and get going.
That's awesome. How was it arriving in Hawaii?
Oh, it was incredible, but it was so bittersweet. I think people quite squarely seem to fall into two camps about the experience of kind of being out there. Mm-hmm. And there are, you know, those that so admirably, you know, don't care about enjoying it or not. They just want to crack it out, smash through the miles, hit records, and, you know, see it as a pure kind of physical challenge, which is, you know, I think hats off to them. I'm in awe. But I think we were lucky to focus, and it was important. It was for the three of us. But obviously, if you're setting out on your own, it's a completely different experience. Yeah. But we all were kind of drawn to the experience of it, rather than, you know, trying to be the fastest, the quickest. We had a bit of a get out, you know, a cheat thing in it anyway, because being a trio, we were the first trio, and if we made it, we were always going to be the first trio, the fastest trio, whatever, to do that route across the mid-Pacific. So, you know, we kind of knew that we had the opportunity to be the first at doing something, but the driver was about the experience of it. So getting into Hawaii, it was amazing. I could practically smell the pineapples and the fresh food, and I was sniffing out a beer from about 500 miles away. But it was kind of that realization of, you know, that was it. You know, we had to step off the boat, and I think we quite happily, I certainly would have, I'm pretty sure my crewmates would have, you know, if we maybe had a day or two on land and kind of resupplied and had a few beers and ice creams and whatever it was we wanted, we would have happily got back on and kept rowing to Japan or Fiji or wherever, I think.
Wow. That's impressive.
It was pretty magical. It was also really grim. It was also horrific at times, absolutely horrific. You know, I can't imagine torture chambers being much worse than being in a sort of probably 6 foot by 3 foot cabin with 2 other crewmates in, you know, on parachute anchor for 4 days in the middle of a storm, with condensation dripping on you constantly, no air to breathe. You know, not the fondest of memories there, but
really smelling it.
That was it. That's what you're in for, right? That's what makes you want to do it.
So you had 2 hurricanes that came, is that right?
We did, yeah. So rowing out of it's a funny route actually, and obviously when I signed up, I had no idea. I hadn't compared, you know, what the different routes would be like or what the difference was or things like that. I just thought, yeah, that sounds hard and that sounds amazing. Let's do it. But so rowing out, getting kind of off the shelf, mm-hmm. and getting away from the Californian coast is pretty tricky because everything just wants to push you back on shore. And we didn't actually, people kept talking about the trade winds. We didn't hit any kind of helping weather or winds or currents or anything until at least a solid 5 plus 600 miles in.
Oh, wow.
And 20 plus days. So even just getting out of the bay at one point, we didn't think we were even going to make it out of Monterey Bay. It was it was tough. And then we spent the next couple of days basically just rowing with one arm, because we didn't have water helm or anything. We were in a classic class boat, foot steering the whole way. So we ended up just rowing with one arm, trying to get west, as we were instead being pushed south by the weather and the currents and stuff. And our weather router, we talked to him every day, and every day he'd say to us, "Good work, girls. You've covered 20 miles today, and 4 of those were in the right direction." Brilliant. Thanks, Sophie. So yeah, but then I think it was by about day 3, and we knew it was going to happen. We basically rode right into a storm. So it was, sort of straight in at the deep end, literally. I think I was looking back at my notes because I was thinking, over time, scale and size of things get so thrown out of proportion. But I was looking back, and I think the conditions then were kind of 35 knot winds gusting to 45 knots. Waves were around 15 foot, peaking at over 30 foot. So it was, it was big seas for, certainly for us 3 people that had never been offshore before. It put Monterey Bay, where we've been training, into perspective with a sort of, 5-6 foot swell.
Yeah.
That actually though was a complete godsend, because, it meant within a few days, things get thrown at you when you're out there, and you really got to deal with it or not. There's no kind of in between option. You can't, step out for a little bit and have a think about it. Not like, we'll just hit pause, regroup. Not really an option. So having to deal with those conditions or sort of make decisions about, at what point do we think it's unsafe? At what point do we throw out the parachute anchor? Having to think about, what are the conditions like right now? But actually in a couple of hours, it's going to be dark. It's going to be a nightmare to put the parachute anchor when it's dark, if the conditions are getting worse and we've got 30-foot waves, and all this kind of stuff. So in a way, it was a complete blessing that we had to deal with all of that right up front in the first week of the race, because we didn't know any better. We hadn't seen any good conditions. We didn't know what good conditions looked like. So it just kind of meant, it's like, right, this is what it's like then. So fine. And, we were pretty lucky that those were pretty much some of the worst sustained conditions that we had over the course of the race. We luckily sort of narrowly avoided another hurricane. And that was probably when we were about maybe 1,000 miles from Hawaii, something like that. It wouldn't have been too nice to run into another hurricane out there. But that's where, again, for us having a weather router, I don't know to what extent other people do or don't do that, or if that's something that's kind of come up on your radar. But for us, it was brilliant, because it just meant we could take his guidance, and that he was telling us at points, he was saying, right, guys, there's, Hurricane Hector or whatever, or Fabio, those are 2 that we had out there, is going to be tracking, X miles west of you on these days. So he'd give us waypoints and say, don't go past that for the next 3 days, which is fine. We're rowing slow enough. We couldn't get past it if we tried. But yeah. So
does that race... Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. No, that was it.
Does that race provide a router, a weather person?
They provide weather information and updates, or certainly they did. So I think the race has actually changed sort of the team that are behind it now. So I don't know if their plans have changed going forward. They provide weather information and sort of updates and some guidance, but we specifically actually went out and like employed a dedicated weather router who's based back in the UK, who was totally on it, looking at our charts day and night and kind of taking a lot of that worry, I guess, away.
Yep. How did you find that person?
I think that was through sort of recommendations. So we found a chap called Stokey, who's hugely experienced ocean sailor and has done a lot of weather routing for other rowing teams across various different routes. But you know, there's lots of guys and girls out there that do it. But yeah, we took a recommendation and then went and met up with him and did some training and various things. What I would have loved to do if we'd had more than the 5.5 months, if someone's got the capacity and a couple of years and stuff, would be to really be able to get on top of your navigation and you know, using a sextant. That would be so cool out at sea. That would be amazing, because ultimately if we lost all, you know, systems and all communication to someone, you know, we couldn't have got ourselves across there. No one can. We're all so reliant on technology. So it would have been incredible to be able to actually do the study and the time to be completely self-sufficient out there. But I'll do that for the next one.
Is there a next one?
Always, but no, not yet. Not yet.
Not yet. Good word choice. Did you have to take a navigation course?
We did some sort of definitely like fundamentals and principles of navigation and meteorology and things like that. So we did a lot of that through working with our weather router. We also had to do one of the prerequisites for the Great Pacific Race was doing our Yachtmaster theory.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's sort of a very universal qualification or something that many people have heard of. I don't think it's one of the prerequisites for the Talisker. I could be wrong, but that is quite an intensive sailing theory course. So it's probably a couple of weeks of a kind of it's either like a week's classroom-based study or, you know, we were doing it independently. So it's a couple of weeks of personal study, and it's obviously pitched at someone who's experienced sailing. Which I definitely wasn't. So even more, it was kind of like, whoa, overload of trying to get up to speed with it. But that taught you also a huge amount about the theory of navigation, offshore navigation and stuff. So, and that course also involves, you know, a few days worth of exams at the end of it. So we felt sort of competent in that way, but it's like everything. You can always do more and more and more and more.
That's cool.
The list never ends.
Yep. Is there anything else that you wish you had prepared? I know you had limited time, so you were just kind of doing whatever you could. Is there anything else that you wish you had prepared beforehand?
I think, in a way, I kind of think no, because you know, you just got to work with what you've got. And so I haven't sort of spent too much time thinking, oh, it would have been better if or better if. But the one thing, again, that we didn't have the chance to do, there will be people, I'm sure, that set out that would say this is what you have to do. And there's a hell of a lot of people that set out joining up, certainly for the races, that, you know, just get on a boat having basically never seen it before and just pull on the oars. If I had the time, I would have liked to have been able to really understand that boat inside out, back to front, upside down, every single wire, every single piece of, you know, kit, how to deconstruct it, how to put it back together. You know, absolutely every tiny nut, bolt and detail of that boat. It wasn't going to be possible in 5.5 months. So that was a judgment call up front to say, am I comfortable getting out and rowing, knowing that I can't do that? And that was my sort of risk tolerance at the time. But if I had more time to prepare, you know, things like our bilge pump broke. probably by about day 3.
The what?
With the bilge pump. So we had no way of also, of using any form of anything other than our hands and a bucket to tip water that was coming over the boat out. So we literally hand emptied every bit of water that came into that boat for the next 2 months. It was painful, and it meant at times you'd be out solo rowing, or times that you just can't put the oars down because it's not safe to. So you would be basically submerged quite a lot of the time, and that there's just the fish just flapping about there, and you can't do anything about it. So we could do all the basics and sort of say, right, check the fuses and fiddle about a bit, but I couldn't have been none of us would have been able to take the panels off and literally identify the exact problem and fix the motor, which is ultimately what needed doing. So yeah, you if you have the time to do all that stuff, you could potentially save yourself 2 months of hand bailing a boat, which I would recommend.
I totally understand that.
But at the same time, if for us that was really the only sort of, boat and equipment type thing that went wrong. So, I'm counting ourselves super, super, super lucky. I'd like to say we just had it all sorted and we were crazy prepped and it was perfect, but no, you're down to luck on a lot of this stuff,
Yeah.
And I'd definitely focus more on making sure that any hole you get into, you could get yourself out of.
That's good advice. It's very good advice. All right, that answers those questions. Let's see. Oh, you guys did a movie, right?
Yeah.
And your movie just came out?
Yeah, it's a short documentary. So yeah, it's called Why Row an Ocean. We had a great guy, a sports sort of filmmaker, do some sort of filming and stuff as we were prepping, just following our crazy 5 months of prep. And then we shot loads of footage out on the boat. So it's a lot of stuff that we took just on our iPhones or for the GoPros. And, it's really not trying to, I think there's quite often a thing around certainly ocean rowing. And when I see a lot of the promo videos and things like that, and it's trying to be like, this is the biggest challenge of your life, and it's trying to show everything as like crazy epic and the most dangerous thing on the planet. And usually it's lots of Marines kind of trying to look super tough, and fair enough, that's true, it is bloody hard, but we sort of I guess kind of just wanted to show a bit of what our experience was. So to be honest, we spent a lot of the time laughing, a lot of the time singing, a lot of the time giggling. I spent a lot of the time just like doing really banal things on the boat, one of you like cleaning, cooking, washing, all you're just living and being out there. So yeah, I think our little film is probably depicts quite a chirpy, happy, look at the sunsets, look at the whatever. It's just the story of our experience in our row. So we're super lucky. It got into a couple of film festivals, and then hopefully we'll get it released online. So yeah, just another perspective and an insight, and some nice shots from the ocean that might entice a few people to get back out there.
That is so cool. And you talking about how you were there for the experience of the rowing, not just to like do it. That's a perfect representation for your movie as hey, it was happy. Like we were having fun. We were enjoying it. Like, I think that's amazing.
Yeah, it was. Yes, there were, honestly, I had some of the scariest and some of the grimmest and some of the most terrifying and some of the just like, really kind of moments of my life being out there. There's nothing like, an absolutely pitch black night. You cannot see a thing, waves crashing from God knows where. You've got no idea where they're coming from. And I remember there was one night that we were doing that, and we always had some solo time overnight on the oars, so time out on the deck on our own. And it's one of these nights, and suddenly the heavens opened, and it was just this crazy driving rain. Couldn't see anything, couldn't distinguish like the waves splashing over the deck from the rain coming down. And then out of nowhere, this massive white bird appears and just starts like swooping down at my head constantly. And I'm thinking that I'm going to end up with some kind of crazy, painful, massive bird hat inadvertently at any moment. And it's just, you know, you can't even foresee it. You can't envisage what that would be like. But then other times we had just the most glorious, you know, a 360 across water and, you know, sunrises and sunsets. And yeah, everybody would sort of say the same, I think, about those. So yeah, best of times, worst of times, but you know, I think that makes the whole experience, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's what you're in it for. The ups, the downs, all of it. And you kind of know that going in, like no idea what'll happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that I sort of found really interesting, and again, it fascinates me what a different experience it will be if you're a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, how you sort of set out in terms of your crew and your setup. But it was really interesting for me kind of seeing the different ways that each of us, we all had, thankfully, like a really common outlook in terms of determination that we wanted to get there and how we wanted to go about it and what the experience would be. But we're all very different characters and very different people. And so it was interesting seeing the difference in terms of what different people needed to motivate themselves or to get out of a tricky spot, or, you know, when you're having a down day and stuff like that. So I think for anybody kind of looking at and understanding what it is that you normally turn to kind of bring you up, you know, whether it is that you know, on our boat, one of my crewmates took like the stack of letters from, whether it was colleagues or friends or family or her dog, supposedly letters from her dog, so I think they might have been from her other half, back home, so she could open a letter every day. And that was just a little pep up, a little sort of perk and something nice every day. My other crewmate sort of was really, what would kind of bring her up and cheer her up a lot was getting kind of texts and emails from people back home about what was happening and how people were, and that sort of live interaction and contact with people back home. Mm-hmm. And I sort of figured out that I actually was really enjoying just being immersed in being out there, and that I kind of just, whatever it is, I just sort of crack my own whip and sort of, you know, drag myself out of whatever it is that, you know, kind of self-motivate in a way. But I think understanding or kind of looking at examples of what might work individually and sort of preparing for that, I would definitely recommend for anybody else sort of setting out.
That's awesome. That's a great outlook that no one has mentioned. So thank you. That's pretty awesome. All right. The question that I ask everybody, what was your favorite food?
Favorite food.
My favorite question.
Favorite food. All the food. No, not all the food. Some of it I don't think I could ever look at it again. But for me, I took, so we had to do a massive supermarket sweep basically in Monterey, because we still had 90,000 calories a person that we had to load onto the boat to meet the race criteria. So we just ran around some like discount supermarket and chucked everything that we could find with the lowest weight and highest calorie content. So I ended up with like hundreds of packets of Minion gummies, like just little gummy suits. And they became one of my favorite things in the world. I don't think I could look at them again now. But yeah, gummy sweets on our boat, Nutella, just a massive, massive pot of Nutella and a big spoon. So we'd ration it and we'd have a spoon a day. And it ran out after about a month, which is one of the saddest days of my life.
How many tubs Oreos. Of Nutella did you start with?
We took one each. I mean, what were we thinking? That was not enough. Yeah, Oreos, sweet stuff. I think we were really keen on, and we actually set it up. So this is one of the weirdest things. When I found myself weirdly kind of daydreaming about getting up, being at home, walking out the door, walking down my high street, popping into a shop, you know, just being able to go and choose new things. So we probably went a bit mad. And we set it up so that we all rotated sleeping in one cabin, in the main cabin. And we used the other cabin to put all the kind of treats and extra food and stuff. So we actually called the bow cabin the shop, where we'd put all the nice stuff. And then kind of every day we'd be like, I'm popping to the shop. Would you like something? And we'd go and like pick out a box of mints or whatever it was. But we called it, the shop.
I love it.
It's weird things that you do to try to, introduce like the concept that it's not just my same pack of food that I've, been having every single day. So yeah, we pop to the shop every day as well.
I think that's awesome. It's like bringing a piece of you from home and like combining the two, like, hey, we're going to the store kind of thing. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, it was the treat. We went to the treat place. It was cool.
Very cool. Is there anything else that we haven't talked about that you want to share?
Oh, gosh. I think really random and probably what most people do. But I was 100%, one of the things that I used out there that actually became quite a pivotal part of my everyday was I just had a planets app, like a night sky kind of GPS based app.
Yep.
And that was massively important to me, not just, for kind of being able to star spot and watch the planets come up and down and know what was what. I mean, it kind of, the night sky was your TV, right?
Yeah.
So actually, on shifts and coming back out in yours 3 hours later, and it's like, oh, Mars is over there now, and oh, look, Saturn's come up on the horizon. It's like, that's your TV. But actually what I found it really motivating for was it giving me details about the kind of, rising and setting of the moon. Because obviously we're moving across time zones. We stayed on California time the whole way, but it meant that for us, sunset and sunrise effectively shifted about 5 hours or so. I can't remember forwards, back, whatever it was. So there was a really big difference doing a night shift on the oars between whether the moon was out or the moon wasn't out. And obviously just having the sea lit up that bit more by sort of moonlight, being able to see the waves coming from what direction and things like that. They were definitely the more pleasant nights, some of them insanely enjoyable. But when there was no moon and it was just pitch black, and we most of the time, I mean, we weren't seeing ships for like 16, 20 days at a time. So we figured out quite quickly that if we turned our nav lights off, we wouldn't have flying fish smack us in the face every 14 seconds. So the fish were massively attracted to the lights. So we started rowing with the lights off. So again, whatever kind of natural light is out there that your eyes can adjust to, the better. And you're going to enjoy the nights a whole lot more. So just knowing in advance of the shift whether the moon was coming up, and I'd be like, oh, right, I've done an hour, but the moon's coming up in 20 minutes, and the next hour and a half of my 3 hour shift is going to be just a whole different game. It's going to be so much nicer. Little things like that. So weird one, and I'm sure loads of people do it. I don't know, but getting a moon and planets and whatever GPS app is something I'm so glad that I used and did.
That's awesome. I have one. I love looking at like, oh, that one's Mars. And I'll often like guess. I'll be like, it's got the red tint. I think it's Mars. That's a great one. No one's mentioned that either. So that is fantastic. See, this is why I want to talk to more people. I love it. Everyone's got different perspectives and different little tidbits, and that makes it pretty awesome.
Yeah. Everyone has. I mean, we listened to everyone's tidbits and ideas and ended up kind of trying to do everything and take everything. So, we didn't have time to even consider getting out the binoculars that we brought. These massive blooming pair of binoculars, no use to us whatsoever. Someone told us to take a radio. I loads of different theories and ideas. That didn't get so you can kind of take too much on board.
Yeah.
But
what was the radio for?
That was some like navigation thing. It was anyway. Yeah, don't do that one. It's not necessary.
Something that might help you cross, but GPS did it all.
you basically need about 3 items of clothing. Yeah, and some music and audiobooks, and yeah, you know, some oars and a boat, and you'll be fine.
Did you guys do speakers on your boat?
Yeah, we did. Oh, that made all the difference.
Okay.
That made all the difference. So yeah, definitely. I don't think there was really a minute of 62 days that we were out there that there wasn't something coming over speakers. And again, if you're solo, you've got the pleasure and the privilege of dictating what comes out over those speakers the whole time. It's not quite the luxury you have in a crew of 3.
Yep.
You know, especially when musical tastes range quite drastically. But no, it was cool. You know, some of the best days I remember were middle of summer, middle of the Pacific, and we were blasting out Christmas tunes just because it was a good sing along. So, you know, yeah, just yeah, that stuff. You know, it weighs nothing. Whatever, just load it up and take it out there. And I know people probably always mention in terms of if you use Spotify and stuff. So we did the Spotify thing, and it's right that if you're offline for more than 30 days, your downloads get wiped.
Yeah.
We had a red box. We used a red box and a BGAN on the boat to get internet connectivity.
Red box. I don't know what a red box is.
So that'll get you online.
Okay.
So we had that and a BGAN, which sort of connected to the satellite to hook us up. We had very minimal data. We didn't have a lot of money to be spending on this. But we did figure out that actually on our phones, if we disabled every single like automatic update and refresh and, you know, disabled every app and stuff, or just wiped everything else off your phone, we did manage to actually connect our phones for the split second that it needed to register a connection to Spotify. And that was one of the happiest days ever, knowing that we weren't going to face the next month at sea without any kind of music. Because I think I had about 7 other tracks saved actually on my phone.
Yeah.
And that would not have been, that would not have been fun.
Did you guys do different devices?
Sorry?
Did you have multiple devices in case one got ruined and went?
Yeah, so I mean, we each had our phones, which you know, had our personal music and stuff like that we could obviously hook up via Bluetooth to the speakers on the boat. But in terms of the crew equipment, we had an iPad, and we took another backup phone to use sort of primarily just as, you know, hooking up to the internet. But that actually died within about 4 days. There was so much condensation and everything in the cabin that it just, gone. So the other thing actually is, I think, again, it's different on the Atlantic, but conditions on the Pacific, the water is so cold. And it was just so cold. You think California, Hawaii, you know, we basically didn't take our foulies off, our wet weather gear, for about the first 20 days. It was freezing, absolutely freezing. So because of that, the condensation inside the cabin was crazy. You're just lying in a box with everything constantly dripping on you, soaking wet. So cables, charging cables. Think how many you need, times it by 10, and then times it by 10 again, because the connections just, you know, they rust and they deteriorate. And yeah, I think we probably must have had about, I don't know, maybe about 15 iPhone charging leads on the boat, and we were pretty much down to, you know, one that if you just wedged it in the right way by the end of it. And again, that would have meant losing our music or the ability to take photos, and those things were super important in terms of, you know, motivation and stuff like that. We would have been gutted if we'd lost those. So yeah, tons and tons of cables.
What did you keep your phones in to keep the condensation from ruining it? Just like a waterproof thing?
Yeah, I don't think we all did, actually. I mean, now if you've got obviously the newer iPhones and stuff like that, I think they'll pretty much be okay. But yeah, it's worth checking on sort of devices. I had a waterproof case on mine, but others I don't think did. So
gotcha.
Yeah, it depends on the phone.
Well, with 30 foot waves and, having to chuck the water out, you might want it.
Yeah, kind of helps. You can just get a waterproof case for yourself. That would be helpful. Sort of caved by the end of it. You spend so much time sort of, and it's just the kind of onshore mentality of trying not to get wet. We walk around cities and home and whatever, and we see it's raining, and you layer stuff on, and you try desperately not to get wet. And by about a month in out there, I kind of thought, no, the other way is the way to go. Keep everything dry. My skin is waterproof. That's going to dry out much quicker than all of my clothes. So as long as I'm not going to get hypothermic, it was a case. And, fresh water shower. It was lovely. So, kind of flipped the mentality entirely. You just have to remember not to do that in the city now.
Yes. Mindset's really key. Like just making that tiny shift. Oh, I get a freshwater shower. Like huge mindset shift that makes such a difference. It's crazy.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Yeah. Little games. Have lots of little mind games set up for yourself, and it really makes a huge difference.
Awesome. Well, I don't have any other questions. You've honestly answered pretty much all my questions. Yeah, you answered all my questions. Yeah.
Hopefully.
No, this was amazing. Thank you so much for chatting. Is it okay if I email you if I have questions in the future, or Facebook Messenger?
100%. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah, honestly. And it's that thing that people can only give their own experience and opinion, and they're all going to contradict each other and stuff. But shout, honestly, anytime, anything at all.
Awesome. Thanks.
But I'll look forward to following along.
Yours will be coming in a couple months.
Yeah.
No, thank you so much. I'm really honored that you listen and that you wanted to come on. So thank you. And let me know about your movie, because I really want to watch it, and I'll post about it as well. So when it comes on the internet, just let me know, and I'll push that out as well.
Amazing. Thank you. Yeah, definitely. I'll share it. You can see what it looked like for us out there anyway. Cool. I can't wait to follow everything that's going on with you. Honestly, it'd be awesome.
Thanks. Well, thank you. I hope you have an amazing rest of your evening, and we'll chat in the future.
Brilliant.
All right, I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. I'm really happy and glad that you guys are listening. If you enjoyed it, please feel free to leave a comment, hit subscribe, and show your interest. Show me you're listening. This was really cool because it was the first person who's really listened to my podcast, and that's kind of cool. Please just hit subscribe, leave a review, and stay tuned. In a couple of weeks, I've got my next podcast episode coming out with my updates on where I am and what I'm doing in the process for my preparation. So stay tuned and come on back in a few weeks.